Do you ever just randomly feel the urge to replay an absolute classic? I get this urge all the time, and I usually resist it, but very recently I failed. Red Dead Redemption turned 16 years old this year, which is an absurd statement to say on its own, so I thought it would be a great idea to take a look at how the game plays after so much time. So settle down, relax, like the video, and let's start with the thing Rockstar Games typically get criticised for the most: the shooting. I'm not going to pretend it feels amazing by modern standards, because it doesn't. It's clunky. There's no elegant way around that. But, and this is the important part, it is still fun, and a huge part of that is Deadeye. Slow time mechanics have always been the great equaliser for dodgy shooting systems. Developers have been using them for decades to politely distract you from the fact that the base gunplay might not be winning any awards. Red Dead Redemption absolutely falls into that category, and I don't care. Deadeye feels fantastic to pull off. Marking the shots, lining them up, watching half of a gang collapse in slow motion is just awesome. Is it masking the poor shooting? Yes it is, but does that make it a big issue? No it doesn't. Gunfights still feel punchy, enemies go down hard, and there is a real satisfaction to clearing out a bunch of enemies. You just become very aware very quickly that this game is from a different era. Not broken, just aged. But now, let's talk about some of the other controls, such as the horses, because Rockstar have been getting away with something criminal for years. Why? And I mean why? Is sprinting still tied to spamming the X or the A button? It is unintuitive, it is uncomfortable, and it makes your thumb feel like it's doing unpaid labour. Every time I play a Rockstar game, I forget how much I hate this until about 10 minutes in, and then it's literally all I can think about. You are constantly tapping just to move at a reasonable speed, which somehow manages to feel really, really annoying and exhausting. The world is just great. It is not a map full of icons, although there are icons, but it's just alive. You'll be riding somewhere for no particular reason and suddenly come across a stranger in trouble, or somebody lying to you trying to steal your horse or kill you, or some absolutely unhinged person. These random encounters are giving the world some extra personality. You never quite know exactly what you're going to stumble into. And you also have the stranger missions, which are just awesome. These aren't heroic side quests. They're weird, they're uncomfortable, they're funny, they're unsettling. You meet people who feel like they've been surviving out here for far too long. And of course there is the strange man, still iconic, still unsettling. Who exactly is the dude? What really ties all this together is the game's sense of loneliness. The towns are spread quite far apart. There is no constant fast travel safety net. You finish a mission in the middle of nowhere, you're now in the middle of nowhere. No cutscene whisking you back to town, no convenient teleport, just you, your horse, and a long quiet ride back to civilization. That could be incredibly annoying in the wrong hands, but here it feels deliberate. The game knows when to shut up. It lets the music roll in, it gives you time to breathe, time to think, time to reflect on what just happened and where John Marston is headed next. Riding alone through the wilderness becomes part of the experience rather than just simply dead space in between objectives. So yeah, parts of Red Dead Redemption absolutely do show their age. The shooting isn't silky smooth, the horse controls do test your patience at times, and the systems are undeniably old school, but I just like the way that it all comes together. In some ways, it works better than a lot of modern games that are terrified of letting you sit with your own thoughts for more than 5 seconds. Visually, Red Dead Redemption has aged unevenly. The character models are pretty rough up close, facial animations can be a bit uncanny, it's not amazing. That said, the art direction does a lot of heavy lifting. The wide open landscapes still look fantastic, sunsets, the moonlight, all of it sells the Western fantasy far better than raw graphical fidelity ever could. From a distance, the game often looks better than it has any right to. Where the game really refuses to age poorly is in the sound design and the music. The ambient audio is excellent, and the score knows exactly when to show up and when to stay quiet. It's subtle, it's restrained, and I think it's incredibly effective. I'd completely forgotten just how little agency John actually has for a large portion of the game. So much of the first half is deliberately small scale, doing favours, solving other people's problems, in the hope that eventually they'll return the gesture and help you track down Bill Williamson and Javier Escuela. At times, it almost feels like the story is stalling. You help someone here, you help someone there, you get pulled into the local politics and the personal vendettas that don't really seem to matter beyond the borders of the people you're speaking to. On a replay, that stands out far more than it did the first time around to me, especially compared to how tightly paced modern narratives tend to be. But that slow burn is intentional. John isn't on some heroic quest. He is a man being leveraged. The government has his family, and every task you complete reinforces how little power he actually has. You're not hunting Bill and Javier because you want to. You don't have their choice. That sense of control, or the lack of it I should say, seeps into everything. The story isn't building momentum yet because John isn't allowed to move forward until the people above him say so. But once the narrative decides it's time, the pace does shift. The hunt intensifies, the tone hardens, the mask slips. It becomes clear that the government's interest in John is simply business. He is a tool, a useful one, but still a tool. This is where Red Dead Redemption's themes really assert themselves. The game is deeply cynical about the idea of redemption as something you can simply earn. John wants to believe that if he does enough good, if he follows orders, if he plays the role he's been assigned, he'll be allowed to live peacefully with his family. The world of Red Dead Redemption does not share that optimism. John's past isn't treated as something that can be undone. It is a weight he carries into every interaction. He's quieter than most video game protagonists, more restrained, and painfully aware of what he used to be. His attempt at redemption isn't framed as self-forgiveness, it's practical. He's trying to minimise the damage, to leave something better behind than what he inherited. And that's what makes the ending so effective. Please skip to this time on screen if you do not want the ending of Red Dead Redemption spoiled to you. I've actually been very nice here because this game is 16 years old. By the time John gets his family back and settles into life on the ranch, there's a brief sense of relief. He's earned a pause. The game lets you exist in that space just long enough for it to feel real. You finally kill Dutch, the government let your family go, it's a happy ending. But then the game keeps going. You do a few menial tasks around the farm, okay, now it's time for the happily ever after. But then the game keeps going. You teach your son how to hunt, that's nice, okay, now it's time for the happily ever after. But the game keeps going. Then the cavalry arrives and the illusion shatters. John knows exactly what's happening. There is no confusion, no last-ditch hope. When he steps out of the barn to face the soldiers, it's not bravery or defiance, it's acceptance. The moment is over almost as soon as it begins, with some gunfire, some silence, and John Marston is gone. What makes this ending so brilliant isn't the shock of it, but the honesty. John's death doesn't feel like a twist. This has been coming. It feels like the final consequence from a lifetime of choices. Redemption in this world doesn't mean survival. It means sacrifice. John was never going to be forgiven by the system that used him, but his death buys something far more important than his own freedom. His family get to live on. Of course, that inheritance does become a bit complicated. His son Jack, growing up in the shadow of his father's violence, eventually tracks down Edgar Ross and kills him. So that would suggest that the cycle isn't necessarily cleanly broken. The world keeps turning and violence remains its own kind of currency. Red Dead Redemption ends not with closure but with truth. Some pasts can't be outran, some debts can only be paid once, and even in 2025 I still find that the ending stands as one of the most confident and uncompromising conclusions that a game has ever dared to deliver. What really stands out to me most about playing Red Dead Redemption after playing Red Dead Redemption 2 is just how different these two games actually are. They share a name, they share a very, very familiar setting, and some themes, but the experiences they're aiming for couldn't be more distinct. Red Dead Redemption 2 is slow, deliberately so. It wants you to be absorbed in the world, in the routine, in the quiet moments. You spend a lot of time simply existing in that space, riding, talking, watching. The game is deeply interested in immersion and in making you feel part of a collapsing world. Red Dead Redemption 1, by comparison, feels unapologetically like a video game. It moves faster, there's far less downtime, far fewer moments where the game asks you to stop and soak everything in. Missions begin, things happen, missions end. You're pushed forward constantly, and the story rarely lingers unless it absolutely has to. That difference extends to how each game treats its protagonists. Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't really about Arthur Morgan in isolation. Arthur is the lens through which you watch the gang fall apart. He's central, but I don't think he's the sole focus. The story belongs to the gang, to the idea of a dying way of life. Red Dead Redemption, on the other hand, is entirely about John Marston. Other characters come and go quickly, often disappearing after a handful of missions. Very few stick around long enough to feel permanent. The narrative never loses sight of John, his past, or his attempt to escape it. everything bends back towards him. Neither approach is necessarily better in any objective sense. One is broader, slower and more immersive. One is tighter, more focused and far more direct. Which one resonates more comes down almost entirely to personal preference, whether you want to live in the world or move through it with purpose. Red Dead Redemption is a brilliant game. What surprised me most wasn't how dated certain systems feel, it was how confident the game is in what it's trying to say. There's no panic about player retention, no obsession with constant stimulation. The game understands its tone and commits to it fully. One of the biggest lessons modern games could take from it is restraint. Red Dead Redemption isn't afraid of its simplicity. Its systems are focused, its world isn't drowning in objectives, you don't have incredible stat trees or whatever, and its story isn't constantly competing for your attention. When something important happens, the game gives it space. When nothing needs to happen, it allows silence to do the work. There's also a clarity to its storytelling that feels increasingly rare. The narrative knows exactly whose story this is, and it never loses track of that. The game also trusts its atmosphere in a way many modern releases don't. Long rides, a sort of quiet HUD, many stretches of land, loads of moments for quiet reflection. That is part of the experience. Red Dead Redemption doesn't try to be endlessly replayable, endlessly expandable, or endlessly relevant. It tells its story, makes its point, and ends on its own terms. And maybe that's why, even all of these years later, it still feels worth revisiting. Not because it's flawless, but because it knows exactly what it is, and never once pretends to be anything else. Thank you for making it to this point of the video. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope 2026 has been kind to you so far. If you missed it, at the end of 2025, I ranked all 62 games I played last year. So if that sounds like something you would want to see, then please make sure to subscribe and go back and watch that video. But for now, that is all. If you liked this video, give it a like, and I will see you next time. Have a nice day, and goodbye.